What's up and welcome back, everybody. Today I'm talking Disney. I'm not talking Oscars or talking Emmys. I'm talking Disney because clickbait. No, not really. Everyone else has some sort of Disney video. There's this one that YouTube keeps pushing on me about woke Snow White. I'm like, I'm not watching that. I don't give. No, do not put the word woke in a title. I'm not watching it. Anyway, I'm John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com. I'm a blind film critic. And these are my responses to Bob Iger about what's really wrong with his company and what he can do to fix it. It's actually really simple. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything that he thinks. He's gotten to that point in life where he's just too old and he doesn't get it anymore. And he's promoting products that are meant for people who are far younger than him, and he just doesn't understand what it is he's watching. I think at a certain point, and I'm not ageist, but at a certain point when you're trying to comment on stuff, I want to know, do you like it? Or do you know how to sell something? Because I feel like if you don't understand something, you don't know how to sell something. And a lot of these films, like Disney live action films, are made for families. They're made for kids. And I don't know that Bob Iger goes into a film like The Little Mermaid and is like, I am living for this film. I'm so excited, I just don't think he does that. I mean, has he seen The Little Mermaid is the better question. So, I don't know. I don't know if he even watches his own films. So he just comments on them. Have they all worked? No, but to a lot of the projects, I'm not really sure that you did trust on creative. I think trusting on creative is my answer to the question. You have to trust creatively. And this comes in two fashions. One, when you hire a director, let the director direct. Let the director do what they're there to do. And actually, you should have gone over the project ahead of time. The scripts usually come before shooting. So you know what's on the page. So whether you're Kevin Feige and you're looking over your Marvel projects, you've seen what's on the page. You should know what the story is. Either the story works for you or it doesn't. So don't interfere with the project. If you need to make tweaks to it, stop being beholden to release dates and feel like you actually have flexibility in being able to maneuver. You shouldn't be so forced to feel like, oh my God, we have to make this release date. We have to get it out by this time. I think the better thing is to just make sure the project works. I've known people who've worked in VFX for Marvel films before, and they're incredibly rushed. The deadlines are just really unreasonable, and then you hear people complaining about the VFX for films or lack thereof. A great example I'll give is Chris Stuckman, who is one of the other YouTube critics. I like to give shout outs to YouTube critics. Nobody ever gives me a shout out, but I'll give shout outs to them. Another YouTube critic that I watched gave some really good shots on Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where he put sort of the difference between the first and the second film, where it felt like they didn't have time to complete all of the visual effects, and they did a lot of close-up shots that they didn't do in the first film. They just constantly zoomed in on somebody's face, and that's just kind of unfortunate because when you go out and you get a director that actually has a vision, that actually is rising in Hollywood, like Ryan Coogler, let the man do his thing. Support him and support his creative vision. I think it worked for Black Panther Wakanda Forever because the performances were amazing. There was a lot of heart and emotion there, and the film did pretty well across the awards ceremony. So again, when Bob Iger says everything is broken, it's like, I don't know that everything is broken. I think Wakanda Forever did pretty good. You can't assume that every single film is going to be a phenomenon and break 100 million, 100 or 1 billion or whatever at the box office. There are levels, and it's something that we're losing sight of. One of the things about Ant-Man was he was never a tier A hero. He was always supposed to be tier B. I think his films were budgeted lower than other Marvel projects, if I'm right, and his films didn't make what other films made. So if there was some unrealistic expectation that Quantumania was suddenly going to be a $500 million grosser at the box office domestically, it was never going to happen. Somebody whose films make, you know, a little under $200 million aren't going to suddenly just be like, oh shit, $500 million, you know, damn. I mean, he didn't add anybody. This is not Ant-Man teaming up with the Hulk. You know, there's nobody, there's nothing in here to really warrant anybody thinking that that's going to change. So I don't really know that Quantum Mania did flop that bad. I would say it underperformed a little bit, but then again, I've heard the visual effects aren't very good. So we can take that back around to don't rush your products, let your visual effects work, especially when your entire film is apparently green screen. So practical special effects, that's where fans really get excited. Anytime you hear somebody using practical effects over special effects, I mean, people go nuts. Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer, fans are just going nuts because Nolan embraces practical effects. He doesn't do computer generated effects. He does not like that in his film. I go back to even Inception with the scene where the room is rotating. They built that. That's a rig. He didn't just use visual effects to create some sort of weird thing and put people in a green screen and then have them on cables. He built a rig and rotated the damn room. You know, like he actually. Anyway, so you get what you pay for, and if you find yourself paying for the wrong things, if you find yourself meddling too much, Disney has notoriously meddled the hell out of some of their films to the point where they've removed directors. Edgar Wright was originally supposed to direct Ant-Man. They fired the director of Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver. I mean, I think Taylor Hackford has done a pretty good job with the rest of the franchise, but Edgar Wright, like, what could have possibly been going so wrong with that franchise that you were like, no? Because that's the kind of vision that you need. You need that kind of vision in this franchise. And, you know, I still want to see his version. Like, I'm really excited. I would have loved to see what it was that he wanted to do with the franchise. Another example is the fact that you hire Phil Lord and Chris Miller to do a Star Wars film and then fire them for doing exactly what it was that they do. You hired the directors of 21 Jump Street, but you didn't like the fact that they were doing an improvisational solo film? What? Did you not watch their previous films? Did you not watch, like, the Lego movie? What did you think was going to happen? If you hire directors like that, who are highly respected and have fan bases, and then you try to turn around to the film community and film nerds and you say, no, these directors suck, you're going to lose fans immediately. There are people who are going to go, wait a minute. No. No, no. No, no. No, no, no. These guys are great. We've loved everything that they've done so far. Everything they touch has turned to gold. I don't know why the fuck you just fired them from this film. And they're going to peace out. And then something like Solo just doesn't at the box office. I mean, it's possible that if Ron Howard had been involved from the beginning and there was never anybody fired, sure, it could have done its own thing. Just like I'm sure Josh Whedon's Justice League would have looked different if he wasn't using a lot of the footage that was shot by a completely different director. So it's to each their own. And that's a great example. You know, you bring Joss Whedon in to do the Avengers. Guess what? The Avengers was great because you used Joss Whedon. I know we're not supposed to praise Joss Whedon anymore. He got canceled, but bear with me here. Bear with me. Let's just accept the fact that Joss Whedon knows what he's doing. Okay, as a director, garbage person, solid director. We don't need to keep hiring him, but unfortunately, the Avengers already exists, so I'm already going to talk about it. Jon Favreau for Iron Man. Man had already directed some films. We already knew what he was going to do. Great person to bring in for the project. Hired him, bring him in, lock him in, get it done. What do we have? Kenneth Branagh for Thor. Who's another person. You hired an actual director and auteur to do these films. And lo and behold, the film isn't that bad. And he did kind of what I would expect from Kenneth Branagh doing Thor. You know, you get kind of what you pay for. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes your choice is weird. I thought Chloe Zhao for The Eternals was a weird choice, considering her previous film. But all right, you know that's what you thought, and it's one of the reasons why I don't think The Eternals worked. But I wasn't a huge fan of that film. It has way too much exposition in it. If you need that much exposition in your film, you need more than one film. So, um, yeah, sometimes it doesn't pay off because you gamble on a director who's a little too new, a little too green, and maybe is not quite landing in the area where they're supposed to be landing. Or you're doing something just totally crazy, like Guy Ritchie directing Aladdin, which is inspired, but it's still Guy Ritchie directing Aladdin, and I didn't get any Guy Ritchie flavor out of that. You know, like why was he there? Like it was somewhat competently directed, but I don't know that I didn't feel Guy Ritchie. I didn't feel like he was really allowed to do a Guy Ritchie film. There are certain ways that Guy Ritchie cuts his films and edits them and even writes them, and all that was lost. It felt like somebody had sucked the soul out of Guy Ritchie and just threw it in Aladdin or something. I don't know. It was very weird. David Lowery did a fantastic job reimagining Pete's Dragon. I mean, he just completely rewrote that film, and that's a standout for me of all the Disney live action films. Then he comes in with Peter Pan and Wendy, and he has this one little thing that's actually interesting, where he actually talks about how Hook and Peter used to be friends, and suggesting that Hook used to be a lost boy. That is your film. Nobody needs to keep seeing the same damn story over and over. But that is the film that they were trying to make with Pan. But still, even in that film, Hook was not the same age as Peter. But the suggestion that Hook actually used to be young enough to be the same age as Pan, I want to see that film. I don't want to see the same damn film that just gives slightly more screen time to the princess. Like that's basically all that film did. Is it did one thing. It achieved one thing, and then the rest of it was just kind of like, whatever. Jude Law's good, like whatever. So trust in your directors, trust in new visions. The standout films of all of your things have been what, like Maleficent and Cruella are like two of the most memorable films that you've produced out of your live action Disney remakes, and it's because they're not carbon copies. Every time you just carbon copy something, it's like, why? I mean, Lion King was cool to look at, but then I think at the end of the day, it didn't really leave anybody with anything, because people were like, well, I still kind of like the cartoon. I still kind of like the cartoon better. I mean, it was a hit because at the time it seemed like a cool idea, and people were like, oh, well, Jungle Book. But Jungle Book even did some different things. It didn't necessarily feel like it was just a reimagining of the animated movie. Stuff like the Little Mermaid, which honestly I haven't seen, so I'm going to say that this comes from I'm stealing this little quote from Your Movie Sucks, another YouTuber, and they talked about in their review of Little Mermaid how the comparison and how ridiculous it looks, this like photorealism that we're going through with these characters to make sure that all the underwater sea life looks like underwater sea life. Well, when we do that, and then we have a song like Under the Sea, where Sebastian starts listing all of the various instruments that all of the different fish are playing, and none of them are playing the instruments because they're just fish under the sea. You know, it the magic of that song and that moment is kind of lost. So I agree with that. Even having not seen Little Mermaid, now that I know that that's what that is, that statement makes total sense to me. It's things like that. If you're willing to go so hard in one direction that you're like, oh, well, photorealism is the most important thing. Why? Kids don't give a shit about photorealism. You know, like, look at all the stuff that they watch, Bluey and stuff. They don't care about photorealism. Paw Patrol, like, there's nothing to suggest that there's like a 7-year-old girl out there that's like, oh my god, they look like real fish. I have to see this. You know, it's like, it's a gimmick, you know, but it's a gimmick that doesn't work. It's this gimmick that just doesn't really do anything. Tell the story from a different perspective. This would have been a great opportunity to explore either one of Ariel's sisters. It would have been a great opportunity to flip the script and tell it from Ursula's perspective. I mean, there's so many opportunities with this film, and they don't take the risks. And then Bob Iger comes up and he complains. He complains about these films. He complains about the Marvel shows. He's like, well, I think the TV shows are watering down. No, it's the quality of your product. That's all it is. It's the fact that you're not monitoring the quality of the product. You're still getting hits. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, last time I checked, made a lot of money. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 made a lot of money. Made the same amount of money as the first two. So I don't really understand when he's trying to blame... It's almost like he doesn't want to make them. Like he doesn't understand them. So he's just trying to use them as the bait. The truth is, you're micromanaging the hell out of films. A lot of people have shit all over Thor, Love and Thunder. But what people don't realize is Taika's original cut of that film was a lot different and a lot longer. And then Kevin came in and was like, no. And then chopped the film way the fuck down. So that is not Taika's cut of Thor, Love and Thunder. That is the cut that Marvel let him release. Taika's cut is rumored to be about an hour longer. So who knows what would have transpired in that cut. But as somebody who's watched all the various TV shows that Taika has made and all of the movies, and we're sitting here talking about the possibility of Next Goal Wins being a Best Picture nominee, he's a director. You don't cut his film. You let it release, and you put it out there. If anything, Oppenheimer is the best example of trusting a director. Chris Nolan says he wants to make a 3-hour drama about the guy that made the bomb. Guess what? It's a huge hit because you let Chris Nolan do Chris Nolan. So if you don't let Taika do Taika, and then his film gets like mixed reviews, that it looks bad on him, but it's not his fault. That is not his cut. So when Bob Iger is coming in here and talking about all of these different things and all these different reasons for why everything is failing, they're not trusting on the creative, and they're not being very creative. I don't know that we need all these Disney live action remakes, but at least if you're going to do them differently. Find something new. Make a Christopher Robin. Make a Pete's Dragon. Make a Cruella. Make a Maleficent. Make something as just, it's wildly different and original in its own way. And it's not just, oh, cool, they're live action looking now, because they're still animated. These characters, they're just photorealistic. And I don't think that's the gimmick. That works once. You know what I'm saying? Like, it worked for The Jungle Book. You can't just keep using that over and over as being the gimmick and the reason to see these films. If you're going to do a film like Beauty and the Beast, for example, don't auto-tune Emma Watson. If you don't like Emma Watson's voice, don't auto-tune her throughout the entire film. Hire somebody who can sing, that you're happy with their voice, that can play Belle, or trust that Emma's voice is good enough, and just roll with that. Also, why did we need another version of Beauty and the Beast? We literally created another version of Beauty and the Beast. There's the animated version, there's a musical version, the live musical version, and now there's the live movie version, which didn't take the songs from the live musical and instead rewrote new ones. I don't really know why. I don't really understand it. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The songs in the musical are great. There's a song called If I Can't Love Her, which is basically Nevermore. They basically spent time and money to write a song that says the exact same things as If I Can't Love Her, just so that they could maybe win an Oscar for Best Original Song. These decisions are not the decisions that would have been made in previous generations or iterations. Most recently, of course, this weekend we had Haunted Mansion open pretty well, and it's getting slightly better reviews. Justin Simien seems to really have gone in a different direction than the film from 20 years ago with Eddie Murphy. And I really hope that Justin felt like his creative vision was supported, because Justin Simien is one of those directors that I would say, if you're going to pick Justin Simien to direct this film, let Justin Simien direct the film. Don't interfere with it. Don't keep coming in and creating new things, because he is a director who should be given the freedom to make these choices. Fox had the same problem with Fantastic Four, where they didn't like what Josh Trank was doing with Fantastic Four, so they constantly micromanaged the hell out of him. They ordered reshoots, supposedly. Look, I really want to know what Josh Trank's version of Fantastic Four was. I do. I think, what's the point of hiring him if you're not going to let him do the project? And now, Justin Simien's like, I don't know what's happening with the Lando thing, and then I read a story about how Donald Glover is being brought on to write Lando. So, is Justin still in the project? I don't know, but it's not like Donald Glover's not a creative. I'd be excited to see his version of Lando, but he was Lando. So, is he writing for... Is it Atlanta? Is he writing for himself again? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. But my answer to Bob Iger is always support the creatives, stop meddling in their projects, and start coming up with new reasons. If you're going to tell a new story, if you're going to try to extend the life of one of your live-action franchises, don't just do live-action. Actually do something different with it. Actually change it up. Change the perspective. Flip the story around. And tell it from a different angle. Don't tell Moana, tell Maui's perspective. Maybe we get to see more of his backstory in the live action. I don't just need a live action Moana just because. No one does. There's no one who's like, my God, please make this film live action. So that's why your company's failing at movies. And there's this weird woke war against Disney, which is actually really homophobic. Disney spoke out against, the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and has been retaliated against ever since then, and been accused of all sorts of things. So anytime that I see somebody who's attacking Disney with whatever nonsense, it feels all a little bit homophobic. And to say that Disney's the only company that's doing this kind of stuff, that is making projects with gay leads. I haven't seen anyone say shit about Netflix's Nimona. Netflix made an animated film for kids with a out and proud gay knight who makes out with his boyfriend in the course of the film. Nothing. And guess what? Disney had that film and Disney canceled it. But the film that we're all hearing about that Disney had and decided not to release was Sound of Freedom. We keep getting reminded that Disney had that film. Disney bought Fox. Fox had Sound of Freedom. That is what is being manipulated in your social media feeds. Every time one of your friends brings up Sound of Freedom, and is like, well, Disney didn't release it, and look where it's at now. And Disney's losing with their Indiana Jones film, and now Sound of Freedom's doing really good, and fuck Disney, woke ass bitches, whatever you're getting in your feed. Um, it's it's all, no one actually says. I've read those memes over and over and over. The wording is never that Disney made Sound of Freedom. It's that Disney had Sound of Freedom and chose not to release it. There's a huge difference there. And nobody's ever stopped to ask why. Sometimes when people buy things, they put things in turnaround. They decide, I don't want to do this project. They try to sell this project off. They don't want to inherit every single thing that somebody else was doing. That just happened to be one of many projects like Nimona that Disney did not want to move forward on. So, this is also the kind of uphill battle that Bob Iger has to fight, is thanks to Ron DeSantis and his bullshit. There's this weird culture war happening against Disney that is completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. But unfortunately, it exists. So without him trying to make new projects, without him trusting in directors and creatives, it may feel like he's being constrained. And he wants to blame the MCU shows that are just telling smaller stories that would never be told on the big screen. When were you going to make a Moon Knight movie, Bob? When was that going to happen? Was that going to happen for you? When were you going to make that film that had Hawkeye passing off the torch to Kate Bishop? How are you going to introduce Kate Bishop as new Hawkeye? When was that going to happen, if not in a TV series? The TV series are making this easier to introduce this new young cast of Avengers. We've been introduced to everybody from Kate Bishop to Miss Marvel to Wiccan and Speed, and just so many people who are the future of the franchise, but we've been introduced to them in ways that I don't think people would have gone to the cinema to see. So I think they're using this stuff exactly how they're supposed to be using it. Anyway, that's just me. So those are my Disney thoughts. And thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I don't think Disney's broken. I don't know what's up with Bob Iger. They do need to fix some things, but most of it is everything I just said. Trust in the creative. Don't cut the hell out of Taika's film and then blame it for bombing at the box office. That's the long and short of that. So anyway, I will see you guys on the other side.